I'm Heather Knight, the San Francisco bureau chief for the New York Times.
I left my heart.
San Francisco is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Books have been written about it, movies have been filmed here, songs have been written about it. It's been known as a gay refuge, a bohemian place for artists and to beat poets. It's been known for its progressive politics, love 'em or hate 'em. I'm about to read you a story I wrote about the most recent narrative the nation and world seem to have about San Francisco.
New research from the Bay Area Council Economic Institute shows that San Francisco is still struggling to recover from the pandemic.
Before the pandemic, San Francisco had the highest building occupancy rate in the country. And now most of the city's skyscrapers sit empty.
And those losses, according to the Bay Area Council, led to big drops in both income and tax revenue.
I've had so many friends and neighbors and coworkers lately tell me I'm so sick of this national narrative that exists about our city. People talk about an apocalyptic hellscape, drugs, fentanyl, homelessness, just this failing city where things get worse and worse. While it's true that downtown is struggling to come back and the Tenderloin and South of Market have really big problems, there are hopeful signs too. So here's the story I wrote. Soon after Karan Mathur arrived in Brooklyn for a new job last year, New Yorkers couldn't wait to congratulate him for fleeing San Francisco. He heard over and over about the abandoned downtown in his former city, the shuttered Nordstrom store that once anchored the retail core but now symbolizes its decay, the people who stumble along the city's sidewalks in a drug-fueled haze, the rampant car break-ins leaving puddles of shattered glass. But that's only part of San Francisco's story, Mr. Mathur has been quick to respond. While the city faces disarray in parts of its grim core, he said he's tried to offer a more complete picture beyond the crime footage that has gone viral on social media and the despair that has been highlighted in various news reports. Mr. Mathur said, "It's like going to New York and spending your entire time in Times Square, and your takeaway is every New Yorker is dressed like Cookie Monster." He tells his neighbors that the city as a whole remains beautiful and its amenities world-class. Since the pandemic upended life in downtowns across the nation, perhaps no major American city has suffered as severe a reputational hit as San Francisco. Residents are now trying to rebuild the city's tattered reputation and finding it a daunting task. A few years ago, the outsider view of San Francisco focused mostly on the city's roaring tech-fueled success, including a skyline dotted with cranes and Google buses whisking young software engineers to their posh tech campuses. That image wasn't entirely accurate either, glossing over income inequality, steep housing costs, and homelessness. But as remote work has upended the thrum of daily life, the city has become a poster child for petty crime, public drug use, and tent encampments, even as the quality of life in most San Francisco neighborhoods hasn't dramatically changed. In a deeply polarized country, conservatives have found a ripe target in the woes of liberal San Francisco. The narrative threatens the city's recovery in lost convention and tourism traffic, and it has become enough of a problem that the city recently enlisted a public relations firm to try to convince the world that the city isn't doomed. The effort comes just before the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Conference in November, which is expected to draw President Biden, about 20 other heads of state, and 1,200 CEOs from around the world. The Tenderloin is a disaster. The financial district has issues, but let's have perspective here, said Jason Mandel, a public relations executive who has lived in San Francisco for 26 years and was hired to counter the ongoing narrative. Like any city, San Francisco is a complicated place with many storylines. It has a property crime epidemic, but low rates of violent crime. It has a homelessness crisis, but according to the most recent homeless count mandated by the federal government, it saw a 15% drop in the homeless population living on its sidewalks between 2019 and 2022. Its downtown recovery is glacial, but its unemployment rate is near historic lows at 3.6%. The city has a record-high 31% vacancy rate in its commercial buildings, and some prominent retail departures have drawn attention. But city optimists say they hope the chain store departures will open up space for artists, nonprofits, and possibly colleges. There is no way to positively spin the drug crisis. 84 people died of overdoses in August, putting the city on track to tally 845 drug deaths this year, the highest on record. But there are hopeful signs, too. Several new parks have opened in recent years, including tunnel tops, where families flock on sunny weekends to picnic, stroll, and take in breathtaking views of the Golden Gate Bridge and the bay. The city has closed a couple of scenic thoroughfares to cars, most notably John F. Kennedy Drive and Golden Gate Park, where people can bike, roller skate, or play a weathered grand piano placed in front of the Conservatory of Flowers. While downtown struggles, previously sleepy neighborhoods are thriving. This month, thousands of people packed Irving Street for the inaugural Sunset Night Market, eating Asian delicacies and watching ballerinas dance in the road. This fall, the chef Tyler Florence will turn 2 cafes in Union Square into Miller and Lux Provisions, one offering baked goods including, as he puts it, the most ethereal croissants you've ever tasted, and one offering rotisserie chicken and rosé on tap. Mr. Florence said he believes the bad national attention has been mostly warranted, but he sees the beginnings of a strong recovery. The pandemic and work-from-home culture and fentanyl on top of that, it was this epic storm that ripped through San Francisco. Every piece of bad news we've gotten, every negative headline, we sort of deserved, Mr. Florence said. But I think we're healing, and healing quickly. Within San Francisco, residents are battling over the image of their beloved city, with some agreeing it's a miserable place, but many finding the reputation overblown. A land use commissioner in August tried to organize a downtown doom loop walking tour, in which participants would have paid $30 to see up-close views of, quote, urban decay in the Tenderloin neighborhood, where homeless encampments and drug use are most visible. The official, Alex Ludlam, resigned from his post and canceled the tour after it drew a sharp backlash and was seen as an attempt to exploit the struggles of those living on the street. Del Seymour, known as the mayor of the Tenderloin for his longtime presence as a social service provider, responded by giving his own walking tour to 117 people. Mr. Seymour, 76, said it was true that city officials haven't done nearly enough to clear sidewalks in the Tenderloin for neighborhood residents, many of them newly arrived immigrants, children, and seniors. Instead, the streets are often crowded with blatant drug markets. But for his tour, he showed participants a more nuanced picture, pointing out the Tenderloin's nonprofits, affordable housing complexes, barbershops, cafes, and bodegas. And just the joy, Mr. Seymour said. This is a very loving neighborhood. The majority of people in the Tenderloin are not involved in the street mess we have. San Francisco saw not only an exodus of downtown workers during the pandemic shutdown, but also residents. The city's population was nearing 900,000 before the pandemic, but about 50,000 people moved out since then, with many taking advantage of remote work options to move to cheaper locales in the Central Valley or other states. But the city still draws newcomers, including those working in the AI industry, which has been growing in San Francisco and which leaders hope will be a saving grace. Angela Hoover, 25, moved from Miami in July to run her AI company, Andy. Wanting to be where most of the action is occurring in her budding industry, she found a place near the panhandle of Golden Gate Park. She said she'd love the small-town feel of her neighborhood, where she's gotten to know her local barista and grocer. So many of my friends told me I was crazy for moving to San Francisco. It's unsafe, it's filthy, it's going down the tubes, she said. My experience has been the opposite. The beautiful neighborhoods, vibrancy, and positivity. That message isn't getting out there. Bobby Pierce and his wife are raising their toddler, August, in San Francisco's Richmond district, a neighborhood popular with families for its proximity to Golden Gate Park, Ocean Beach, and eclectic small businesses. He grew up in rural Ohio and said his hometown's congressman, Representative Jim Jordan, has posted frequently on X, the social media site formerly known as Twitter that is based in San Francisco, about the horrors of the city. Fentanyl deaths, homelessness, and economic struggles exist in Ohio too, but don't attract nearly as much attention, Mr. Pierce notes. Besides, in Ohio, he couldn't walk from his house to see an old movie at the rehabbed 4-star theater or to the California Academy of Science to show August its famous albino alligator, Claude, like he can in San Francisco. When I was growing up, the meme of San Francisco was that it was this ungodly gay place, and before that, it was hippies, Mr. Pierce, 36, said. It's never had a nationally savory reputation, I suppose, which is maybe what draws me to it. James Felino, 28, a consultant for environmental nonprofits, said he moved to San Francisco from New York 5 years ago for its relaxed vibe, proximity to nature, and thriving LGBTQ community. But when he visited home over the summer and the topic of San Francisco came up, he immediately felt defensive. When people learned he lives in San Francisco, they responded with a facial expression that he described as, quote, aghast. Then came a whispered, "Are you okay?" "I am," he assured them, again and again. This article was read by me, Heather Knight. The audio was produced by Sarah Diamond. Thanks for listening.